We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
This Turning Point conference, the were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs, and you know, the cigar.
I think it's important that every single person that attended that Turning Point, every Republican, speak up against these stickers, against the flags that were waved.
You let them in.
President, open your
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit.
But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a wealth.
You think you've seen media drama? Think again. We're diving headfirst into a firestorm where daytime TV gossip collides with 9-figure lawsuits, and the king of podcasting throws gasoline on the flames. Imagine this. Joe Rogan, the man who interviews everyone from astrophysicists to professional fighters, just unleashed a verbal smackdown on the hosts of The View. And this isn't just some random celebrity spat. Oh no, this is playing out against the backdrop of Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, dropping a $100 million lawsuit right onto their plush studio couch. If you thought daytime television was just about light chatter and celebrity interviews, buckle up, because this story is a high-speed collision of egos, ideologies, and cold, hard cash. What happens when accusations fly and the legal eagles are summoned? Stick around, because the fallout from this is something you absolutely need to understand.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to
So, let's set the stage. Charlie Kirk, a prominent figure in conservative circles, didn't just send a strongly worded email. He decided to go for the financial jugular, slapping The View and its parent company, ABC, with a lawsuit that screams, "This is not a drill. $100 million. Let that sink in. It's a figure designed not just to seek damages, but to make an earth-shattering statement. Kirk's contention? That the hosts of The View didn't just criticize him, which, as a public figure, he acknowledges comes with the territory. No, he alleges they crossed a serious line by, in his view, smearing thousands of high school and college students who attended a Turning Point USA event. He argues that these young people traveled from all over the country, only to be painted with a brush they didn't deserve, potentially casting a shadow over their futures because of comments made on a national television show. Kirk has been clear. While he can take the heat, he draws the line at attacks on the students his organization represents. This isn't just about his reputation. It's about the 5,000 young attendees he claims were unfairly maligned. The lawsuit itself is a bold maneuver, a high-stakes gamble that forces a confrontation far beyond the usual Twitter spats. It's a public declaration that some words have consequences, and those consequences can come with a very hefty price tag.
Has to be if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin's
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it and it's nothing.
Just
there.
go for it. Yeah,
there's nothing there. Sometimes comics do that.
But what exactly lit the fuse for this colossal legal battle? It all circles back to a Turning Point USA Student Summit in Tampa, Florida. Outside the conference, a small group of demonstrators appeared, reportedly waving flags with hateful symbols and shouting vile slurs. The controversy ignited when, according to Kirk and his organization, hosts on The View linked these protesters and their odious messages directly to the Turning Point organization, and, more damningly, to the thousands of students inside the event. The View's hosts, known for their outspoken and often liberal-leaning commentary, discussed the situation, and Turning Point USA quickly cried foul, asserting that their event and its attendees were being falsely associated with ideologies they vehemently disavow. The implication, as Kirk saw it, was that his organization, and by extension the young people attending, were somehow complicit with or supportive of these fringe elements. This accusation, Turning Point argued, wasn't just inaccurate, it was deeply damaging. They sent a cease and desist letter demanding a retraction and an apology. The core of their argument is that The View didn't just report on protesters outside, they allegedly tarred the entire conference and its attendees with the same brush, a move Kirk deemed an unacceptable and defamatory attack on minors and young adults. The airwaves crackled with tension, and the stage was set for a legal showdown of epic proportions.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo who showed up outside the event.
Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said
on television.
You know, just let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has that. He has all those rights. He is immune from everything.
Yeah.
You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Enter Joe Rogan, the wild card in this already volatile mix. Rogan, whose podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, commands an audience of millions, didn't pull any punches when discussing The View and its hosts. He's not exactly known for mincing words, and this situation was no exception. In his characteristically blunt style, Rogan essentially torched the show, suggesting that if you averaged out the intelligence of The View's hosts, they'd rank among the dumbest people on television. He described their commentary as often unthinking, like half-baked ideas thrown out without any real substance. While he conceded that someone like Sunny Hostin might not be dumb, but rather ideologically driven with blinders on, he was particularly scathing about Whoopi Goldberg, stating she's certainly not the brightest person and that her statements often make no sense. Rogan compared some of their on-air moments to a comedian going on stage with a premise that's completely undeveloped. There's just nothing there. His critique wasn't just a passing jab, it was a dismantling of what he sees as a show operating within a very specific, insulated ideological bubble, where dissenting voices, often a token conservative woman, are shouted down or silenced. He pointed to their treatment of figures like Meghan McCain as an example of this dynamic. Rogan's perspective is that The View often serves up performative outrage rather than genuine, thoughtful discussion, and his takedown added a whole new layer of public scrutiny to the beleaguered talk show, amplifying the perception that its hosts were out of touch and intellectually sloppy.
Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me, and it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So,
The View did eventually issue an on-air apology, or at least what they termed an apology. Whoopi Goldberg, in a segment following the initial controversy and the cease and desist letter, stated that in a previous conversation about Turning Point USA, she had put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. She acknowledged, "I don't like it when people make assumptions about me. And it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry." While an apology was offered, the crucial question became whether it was enough and for whom. Charlie Kirk's response was telling. He questioned whether the students who were allegedly smeared would accept it, emphasizing that the core issue was the impact on these young individuals. He stated that his organization was still entertaining the lawsuit, consulting with top lawyers specializing in such complex cases. His stance suggested that a brief on-air mea culpa might not be sufficient to undo the damage he believes was inflicted. The apology itself became another point of contention, with critics arguing it felt perfunctory or insufficient given the gravity of the accusations made. It highlighted the chasm between a media organization trying to manage a PR crisis and an aggrieved party feeling that a profound injustice had occurred, one that couldn't simply be wiped away with a quick, "my bad." The legal threat loomed large, signaling that this fire was far from extinguished.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side. We're on the right side, and if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do. And no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge, and on that bridge they'll.
I think the problem with that show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in. You know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. And, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just, it's a bizarre show.
This whole saga doesn't just exist in a vacuum of celebrity feuds and legal jargon. It taps into something much bigger. It's a glaring spotlight on the increasingly polarized media landscape, where lawsuits are becoming a go-to weapon in ideological battles. We're seeing a shift where public discourse is so fraught, so tribal, that disagreements often escalate into full-blown legal warfare. The lines between red and blue, left and right, are drawn so sharply that any perceived slight can trigger a massive response. Rogan himself touched on this, observing how ideological labels can blind people, making them believe their side is always right, stifling critical thought. He even posited that many things once associated with the authoritarian right, like suppression of free speech or mandatory interventions, are now being embraced by factions on the left. This lawsuit, in a way, is a symptom of that broader cultural division. It's about more than just what was said on one episode of a talk show. It's about who gets to control the narrative, whose voice is considered legitimate, and what happens when powerful media entities are accused of overstepping. The View, a bastion of mainstream liberal commentary, finds itself in the crosshairs of a conservative activist willing to use significant financial and legal leverage. This isn't just a spat. It's a skirmish in the larger culture war, where reputations are currency and the courtroom is increasingly becoming the battlefield for hearts and minds. Whoopi Goldberg's reported comment, suggesting that President Biden could throw every Republican in jail if the Supreme Court affirmed presidential immunity, only adds fuel to this perception of an unhinged partisan mindset, further illustrating the deep ideological chasms at play. It's this kind of rhetoric that opponents seize upon as evidence of an echo chamber detached from reality.
Megan, I get it. I also hate Joy Behar. So I don't love you, but I also hate that squawking bird. So I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show. If the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No, double
X. Okay.
Double X.
They brought in the lowest of the double X's for that one. It's rough.
The controversy isn't just about this single incident with Turning Point USA. It's compounded by a history of remarks from The View's hosts that have drawn considerable ire and accusations of elitism or disconnect. Take, for instance, Sunny Hostin's comments dissecting election demographics, where she specifically mentioned uneducated white women voting for Donald Trump. Such statements, regardless of the statistical context she might have been aiming for, are easily perceived as condescending and dismissive, alienating a significant portion of the populace. Critics argue that this kind of language reinforces the idea that certain media elites look down upon those who don't share their educational background or political views. The counter-argument, of course, is that not attending college doesn't equate to a lack of intelligence or wisdom. Life experience and practical knowledge hold their own value. When hosts on a national platform make broad, seemingly pejorative generalizations, it feeds into the narrative of an out-of-touch media class. Then there's the infamous on-air dynamic, particularly involving Joy Behar. Clips have circulated widely, like one where Tulsi Gabbard appeared on the show to defend herself against accusations, and Behar was seen seemingly flustered, looking down at her notes as Gabbard calmly refuted points. Rogan's guests have characterized people like Behar as seemingly having dementia or being unfit for a national platform, suggesting they are ill-informed and incapable of coherent debate. While extreme, these critiques reflect a deep-seated frustration with what many perceive as a decline in the quality and fairness of discourse on shows like The View. These instances accumulate, creating a pattern that opponents use to argue that the show is not a forum for balanced discussion, but a platform for partisan attacks and intellectual arrogance, making the current lawsuit feel like an inevitable boiling point for long simmering resentments.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth.
So, where does this high-stakes drama head next? The possibilities are as wild and unpredictable as the feud itself. Will The View and ABC opt for a quiet settlement, writing a substantial check to make the $100 million problem disappear? That's often the path of least resistance for large corporations facing potentially damaging and costly litigation. However, Charlie Kirk seems determined to make a point that transcends mere financial compensation. If this does proceed to court, prepare for a media spectacle unlike any other. Discovery phases in such lawsuits can unearth a treasure trove of internal communications, emails, messages, behind-the-scenes discussions, all potentially laid bare for public consumption. Imagine the sound bites, the leaks, the relentless media coverage. Each side would likely treat the courtroom as another stage, crafting their arguments not just for the judge and jury, but for the court of public opinion. The View hosts might attempt to recalibrate, to appear more measured, but old habits die hard, and drama, after all, is their lifeblood. Social media naturally will be a relentless Greek chorus, fanning the flames with memes, hot takes, and endless commentary, ensuring that no detail, however minor, escapes scrutiny. And lurking in the background, or perhaps right in the foreground, is Joe Rogan. His initial mockery wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was a significant cultural intervention. His platform has the power to keep this story in the public consciousness, framing it for millions who might otherwise ignore daytime TV squabbles. His continued commentary could shape perceptions and apply a different kind of pressure, one that formal legal proceedings can't replicate. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a content goldmine, a real-life soap opera with immense viewership. Every development will be scrutinized, debated, and spun. The unpredictability stems from the modern media landscape itself. A tweet can ignite a firestorm, a podcast clip can redefine a narrative. Nobody can say for certain how this will conclude, but one thing is guaranteed. It will be messy, it will be loud, and it will be undeniably captivating.
Yeah, did you watch the episode when Tulsi Gabbard got on to defend herself and Joy Behar starts panicking and going over her notes while Tulsi is refuting everything that she said?
Yeah, I mean, Joy Behar, like, again, these people have dementia. These are people who, like, should not be allowed out of the house. They have a national platform. I mean, it is crazy. They have no idea. These people have never read, like, a book.
And there's versions of it.
The real flavor, the delicious irony in all of this, is witnessing how swiftly the dynamics can shift. One moment, you're a powerful voice on national television, shaping opinions and dishing out critiques. The next, you're staring down the barrel of a 9-figure lawsuit and being systematically dismantled on a podcast more commonly associated with elk meat and DMT. It's a stark reminder that in the volatile arena of public discourse, power is fluid, and accountability can arrive from the most unexpected quarters. This entire episode serves as a fascinating case study in the evolving nature of media power and the ongoing culture wars. What does it signal for the future? Perhaps it's a loud wake-up call for media personalities and outlets who may have grown comfortable lobbing accusations without fully considering the potential blowback. Charlie Kirk's lawsuit, whether it ultimately succeeds or fails in court, has already sent a potent message. Opinions might be constitutionally protected, but false and damaging accusations, especially against private citizens or groups of young people, can carry a colossal financial and reputational price. It's a legal shot across the bow. And Joe Rogan's intervention? That's a different kind of power play. It showcases how influential figures operating outside the traditional media ecosystem can effectively challenge and reframe narratives, holding mainstream outlets accountable through biting humor and unfiltered commentary, free from the constraints of network executives or advertiser anxieties. He provides a masterclass in how to cut through the noise, offering a perspective that resonates with millions who feel alienated by established media. This story is a perfect confluence of legal machinations, media spectacle, and pop culture theatrics. You have a determined conservative activist with the resources to challenge a media giant, a panel of television hosts whose brand is built on provocative opinions, and a podcasting behemoth unafraid to call out hypocrisy wherever he sees it. And we, the audience, are left with a front row seat to the unfolding chaos, popcorn firmly in hand. So, the next time you hear sweeping generalizations or potentially defamatory statements tossed around casually on air, remember the saga of Charlie Kirk, The View, and Joe Rogan. It's a potent reminder that in today's hyper-connected, highly contentious media battlefield, the loudest voice doesn't always win. Sometimes it's the voice with the sharpest legal team, the most cutting wit, or simply the deepest pockets that ultimately changes the game. The View might just be learning that lesson the hard way, discovering that their daytime drama now has stakes that are very, very real and potentially very, very expensive. This isn't just about ratings anymore. It's about survival in a media landscape that is being reshaped before our very eyes.